Hi everybody, I can't believe I'm finally here making this video. Just a couple of months ago, this was a mere fantasy. I literally never thought I'd be okay enough to come on here and share my journey with you. When I was in the thick of my suffering, watching other people's recovery stories was so incredibly helpful, but I never found anyone speaking about chronic hives and urticaria. So here I am, being the brand ambassador for it, if you will. But of course, that said, this applies to anyone dealing with any kind of chronic illness with symptoms doctors can't quite explain, or maybe it's migraines, pain, fatigue, dizziness, and you've tried everything and nothing seems to be working. I know just how hopeless that feels and the depth of suffering it causes. So I hope that this video serves as a glimmer of hope and perhaps reframes your perspective on healing and recovery, because ultimately that's what this journey has been about for me. And obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to give any medical advice. I'm just sharing my experience with chronic hives. So yeah, I'm just gonna dive right in. Unfortunately, or fortunately, hives are not new to me. We actually go way back. I first got them at 18 and it was like a full body breakout after eating prawns. I assumed it was an allergy or a bad batch, and throughout my early and mid 20s, I had maybe 2-3 more full body reactions, one from salmon and others unexplained, which I just chalked up to some kind of emotional or environmental trigger. And between these episodes, I'd sporadically get 1 or 2 small hives on my face, maybe once a month, once every 2 months. I'd pop a Claritin and they'd disappear. They usually came from high histamine foods like kimchi and sauerkraut. I figured it's just an acute reaction to this histamine and I never worried about it too much. But the full body reactions terrified me, mainly because I was afraid that they progress into angioedema, which is swelling that can affect the tongue or throat and potentially constrict breathing. So I'd always rush to the emergency and get antihistamine and steroid injections, and within about 30 minutes the hives would vanish completely, and it just reinforced the belief that these are just acute and manageable. But fast forward to September 23rd, 2024, I'd eaten tuna sushi earlier that day, and that's something that I've never reacted to before. And it was also the day my mother had an accident, broke her arm. So I remember it being a very difficult day. I was super anxious and scared and helpless. And later that night, I woke up at 3 a.m. with hives on my chest, ribs, and thighs. I quickly just assumed it was this tuna, and I just took Claritin and went back to sleep. But when I woke up in the morning, they were still there. And that had never happened before. And that from that point on, they just never went away. And that was the start of my chronic urticaria. So from September to December, I explored 3 paths simultaneously. My mindset was that I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. Like, I believed that there was a reason I'm getting these hives every day, maybe an allergy, an unknown trigger. I didn't know, but I was confident that I would figure it out. And I was also taking 1 to 2 antihistamines a day just to keep the edge off, keep the itch down, and thankfully they were effective initially. Obviously, we know the consensus around a lot of chronic conditions is that there is no cure. Like, you are meant to just manage your symptoms for the rest of your life, but I refused to subscribe to that belief. And so I began my investigations. So the first path that I explored was through energy healers. I'd always believed that illnesses and diseases weren't purely biological. Like, I'd been an avid student of depth psychology, Buddhism, meditation, mindfulness since I was 18. I had many years of meditation practice under my belt, albeit inconsistent. So the concept of this possibly being mind-body and caused by trapped emotions and unprocessed trauma wasn't crazy to me. The second path was alternative medicine. So this included gut stuff, Chinese medicines, we're talking diet changes, tons of supplements, GI maps, and acupuncture. The third path was traditional medicine, which was your standard rheumatologist, allergist, immunologist, and dermatologist. When it came to traditional medicine, the times that I couldn't take an antihistamine before an allergy test or biopsy were brutal. Like, I'd sleep maybe 10 minutes total a night because the hives would start small around 7 p.m. and spread and join. And I'm not kidding when I say they become this massive, like huge welts on my thighs, back, stomach, chest. And after seeing multiple professionals across all three paths, nothing worked. Like the energy healers had different explanations, like it's this trauma from childhood, it's this relationship, it's this wound. And every time they process the energy and release the emotions from my body, I'd flare even worse the next day. And with the doctors, they straight up traumatized me. Like I did so many tests, like autoimmune panels, allergy testing, biopsies. I was even misdiagnosed with mixed connective tissue disease, which is a very serious autoimmune condition. Finally, after the biopsy results came through, the diagnosis was confirmed, and it was urticaria with early vasculitis. Vasculitis is a life-threatening autoimmune disease that involves blood vessel inflammation that affects your vital organs. This was obviously not that, but a variant of it that was limited to the skin. Urticaria alone was, on a daily basis, was bad enough, but now I'm being told it's autoimmune and it involves my blood vessels. So that was like my breaking point. And when I started spiraling, like I pretty much just fell apart because the energy healing wasn't working. The functional medicine approach wasn't inspiring confidence either. With the conventional medicine doctors, I had two medication options, so steroids and immunosuppressants and Xolair, and I flat out refused both. I just knew with so much clarity that I could not and would not be suppressing the symptoms. It would just feel like I was living a lie. I mean, I understand I'd be okay and function normally, but internally I'd be carrying this constant awareness of the truth that my body was still trying to break out. I was just chemically forcing it not to, and that just felt so fundamentally wrong to me. And of course, there was also the matter of side effects, very real complications that come with drugs this powerful, and it felt like I was just trading one issue for the other. So by December, most of the paths I was pursuing hit a dead end, and December to April were hands down the worst months of my life. I truly have no words for the level of fear, despair, frustration, and grief I experienced on a daily basis, and just utter hopelessness and so much hatred. I hated my body for doing this to me. I felt like I was cursed and punished. And at this point, I was taking 4 antihistamines daily, which were useless. I was left with just Chinese medicine, which included acupuncture and an extremely restrictive diet. So no high histamine foods, no gluten, no dairy, no sugar, no spices, no flavor. I was down to 15 foods, and slowly everything in my life stopped becoming possible. Simple things like walking, eating out, wearing a t-shirt, sitting comfortably. By January, I was fully homebound, covered in hives 24/7. Every day I'd wake up with a new surprise because they were so unpredictable and maddening, taking over new areas of my body every day. It was like this insidious, living, breathing organism on my skin with a will of its own. I may add a link to pictures in the description if anyone is curious what they look like. My Chinese medicine doctor kept saying, like, be patient, it'll take a year or two, but you'll be okay. And I tried to trust him, but I just getting worse, and they started spreading to my fingers too, which sometimes made it impossible to even use my hands. And I started getting angioedema on my lips, which would make them twice the size, and I'd rush the ER out of fear of it spreading to my throat and tongue. I was always just so itchy and in so much pain and so much discomfort. I strictly wore like turtlenecks and long sleeves because I was just so ashamed and embarrassed of them, even around my closest family members. And I was working from home and only left for super important meetings, which took a Herculean effort. There's this constant desperate question in my mind, like, why is this happening? I just couldn't get myself to believe that my body was just randomly decided one day to react to nothing and everything and attack my blood vessels. And Chinese medicine explanations weren't cutting it. The nervous system science I was looking into as well wasn't either, even though it made perfect sense. So yeah, I'm not sure I was suicidal because I didn't actively want to kill myself, but I thought about dying constantly. Death was the only certainty I had, that someday this would eventually end. I just didn't want to exist anymore. And That does sound pretty suicidal actually, now that I think about it. But I don't know, you decide. Yeah, so like I just kept going back to the nervous system stuff because I didn't have anything else to do with my time. And the science explained that chronic symptoms are because of dysregulation, that your body tags danger everywhere and needs to be retrained to feel safe. So I did breath work, orienting, like all them practices, which made me feel calm and safe during. The second I stopped, the fear, overthinking, catastrophizing all came rushing back. But I kept doing them anyway, hoping to train my nervous system eventually. It obviously didn't work, and I think by this point it's April, so I decided to try another Chinese medicine doctor who specialized in custom herbal formulas. I'd seen people recover on them. The first 2 weeks I actually hardly had any hives, and I was like, this is it. I started going back to work. I thought I'd finally recover, but I was wrong, because after a while its effectiveness started reducing. It felt like the hives were just trying to break through everything that I tried. And I was fine during the day, like I could wear a t-shirt, go to work again. And don't get me wrong, I was incredibly grateful for that reprieve, because the herbs really did pull me out of rock bottom when I was heading down a really dark path. But every evening I'd brace myself for this inevitable breakout, and it was this looming dread hanging over me all day. So I think by now it's the end of May, and I told myself, like, you can't just sit here being afraid of these impending flare-ups, but also being afraid of feeling afraid too. I had to find a way to process all that fear. And I got COVID around then too, and I just recall laying in bed with a fever that kept increasing, and I thought to myself, like, this is actually pretty cool. My body's heating up on its own to fight this infection and virus, and I didn't even have to ask it to, and I didn't have to manage this process. And I had this moment of deep respect and awe for my body. I was like, it's actually pretty brilliant. So after recovering from COVID, I remembered a post I saw on Instagram a while ago, which was like, sometimes when we get out of the way and give our bodies permission, it can finally complete its processes. And I was like, maybe I need to stop interfering and just let myself flare without freaking out. And around this time, I stumbled upon Sam Miller's channel through Reddit, and she was pivotal in my recovery journey. I cannot recommend her YouTube channel enough. She finally answered the question I'd been crying into the void for months of, like, why is this happening? And I'm probably gonna butcher her explanation, so I recommend you watch her stuff directly. But the essence of what I understood was that when we're kids and we have difficult experiences that bring up emotions, we're told these big emotions are unacceptable. So our ego, the protective part of us, steps in and suppresses this emotion and tags it as unsafe and dangerous to feel. So every time the emotion comes up later in life, like grief, sadness, fear, our ego stops us from feeling it and processing it. But there's another part of us, which is our true self, capital S, and that has infinite capacity to hold everything. It's like this boundless, unconditional presence that just witnesses. And she refers to Carl Jung's concept of individuation a lot. So it's about becoming whole and integrating parts of yourself that were once split off, and that illness is not a punishment or malfunction. It's an invitation back into that wholeness, and emotions are just energy that need to move and complete themselves. When I say emotions, I mean like the sensations in your body. That's what I learned emotions actually are: physical sensations, tightness in your chest, heat in your stomach, pressure in your throat. Like that could be grief, anger, fear. Even joy might feel like this buzzing, expansive feeling in your chest. And she also explains like symptoms are proxies for repressed emotions, and your true self knows it's time to feel them and become whole. So it uses the symptoms to get your attention. And once you've processed enough of that backlog, your nervous system then regulates, and your body doesn't need to use symptoms anymore. And I was like, wow, I finally understand the exact purpose my symptoms were specifically serving. I knew I wasn't crazy and that my body just wasn't malfunctioning randomly. And she also talks about like this divine intelligence inherent in nature that's in everything, including our bodies. Like when we get cut, we don't consciously direct our body to heal. It just does that automatically, just like my fever. And that just felt really comforting to me, because this intelligence is so much wiser than my conscious and rational mind. If I were actually in control of every single one of my body's processes, like breathing, digesting, pumping blood, I probably wouldn't be alive for more than a second. So yeah, I just leaned into that, and that's when I knew I was ready to surrender. Her practice is all about allowing, so being with what is, witnessing it without judgment. So she recommends dropping into your body throughout the day, even if it's just to feel your symptoms. So I'd stop and feel the itch, let the sensation of the hives just be there. Then I realized something. And heads up, from here on, it's basically just gonna be me realizing stuff, hence my YouTube handle. But yeah, when I drop into my body and feel the hive, I realized I stopped thinking. Like, I didn't have any thoughts. There was no interpretation or judgment. It just existed as a sensation, and I just observed it. And that's when it hit me. I'm not my symptoms. I'm the one who's aware of them. And Sam also warned that when you step back and truly allow your body to do what it's doing, you will flare. Your body will basically say, okay, she's ready to feel everything, so I'm gonna give her even more. And she was right. I got so much worse when I started allowing. So for 33 days straight, I had the same level of hives I usually would only get right before my period. But somehow, like, I felt okay. It felt like something happening in my body, not something happening to me. And during those 33 days, I also started reintroducing foods one at a time and tapering my antihistamines, literally shaving like 0.05 milligrams down with a nail file. And I stopped the herbs too, and I just let go of control, and I just let them run wild and free, which is something I really never thought I'd be able to do. And then other stuff started coming up in my body, like actual raw emotions. Out of nowhere, I'd start crying, or I'd feel rage or panic. And it felt totally different than before, though, because before I'd be crying because of the story in my mind, like, I'm never gonna get better, I'm never gonna get my life back. This time there was no story, so the emotions would just arise and move through me, and I didn't have the need to know what trauma or what childhood experience the emotions were related to. I just then realized something even more profound, which is that I wasn't suffering anymore. Like, despite the intense emotions and despite the severe flare, I was just feeling it for what it is. And after weeks of intense emotions and sensations, temperature changes, buzzing, tinglings, tremors, yawning, sighing, which I believe are all signs your body's processing emotions, my hives went down for the first time on their own. And I came to another realization, which is that the issue was never the hives, it was my resistance to them. The mind looks at the hive and decides it's bad and it doesn't want it to be there. But if I wasn't thinking about it, it would just be. That state, when you're not thinking, that's who we really are. That's our true self. And what I realized I needed was two things. First was embodiment, so actually feeling and processing my emotions somatically and letting them move through my body. And second was disidentification, so witnessing it all from awareness, from presence, without being consumed by it. If I processed somatically without awareness, I stayed identified with suffering. And if I awakened without embodiment, that was spiritual bypassing. And Missy Mariano, who is a life coach, she played such a crucial role in my awakening and disidentification piece of my journey. I'm gonna link her website in the description below. She's amazing, and she actually suffered from chronic hives herself too. Yeah, it's easy to think my symptoms are unprocessed emotions and trauma, so I'll just feel everything and get rid of it, as if you are purging these icky, unwanted emotions from your body. And that's what I tried to do from September to December with energy healers. And to be honest, it's pretty much how I was operating even before my chronic hives, using energy healers to get rid of belief systems and manifesting toward my current reality, and meditation as distraction. And what I eventually discovered is I had to stop wanting to get rid of what was happening. And really that was about letting go of control. And the ego loves control, because control means staying in your head, managing, strategizing, fixing to avoid feeling. But things started changing when I dropped into my body and let go of the need to control anything at all. And trust me, I know how frustrating that sounds. Anytime I heard anyone in the nervous system space or a healer or anyone say that, it drove me insane. I was like, what do you mean not want to get rid of it? Like, how could I not want this gone? And I was seriously contemplating not being that annoying person saying the same thing. But after much deliberation, it really is the truth and the shift that changed everything for me. But I will also share the nuance that personally helped me with that, is that it was actually about a perspective shift. So shifting from I need to heal and fix this and get rid of this to I just want to be with what is currently happening in the present moment. And of course, it's natural to question that. Why would you want to be with all the crappy stuff happening to you in this moment? And what I came to realize is that the now, the present moment, is the only thing that exists, and that the now is always trustworthy. How could the only thing that exists not be worth trusting? Like, even when it's fraught with desperation to heal or fear or whatever, because the past and the future don't actually exist the same way the present moment does. They're created by the mind, by thinking about them. But when I wasn't thinking, I was just feeling. And feeling is being in the present. And being in the now didn't mean I no longer wanted relief or that I suppressed my desire to heal. To be present in the now meant even the desire to heal is allowed to be here. So the next deeper shift I discovered was being is just who I am anyway. So I wasn't using presence as a technique to heal. I was just being. It looked a bit like just closing my eyes and noticing the first thing that came up. And sometimes it was a thought like, I can't live with this, I'm never gonna be okay. Like whatever it was, I just noticed it and I'd let that entire stream of thoughts exist and watch the narrative play out like a movie in my head. And all these thoughts were laced with frustration and urgency and pressure. And once I'd watch the thoughts play out, I'd drop into my body and notice the sensations and just be with them. And when my mind would pull me back up into thinking, I'd hear it out and then gently return back to the sensation. Like I just kept doing that as many times as possible, multiple times throughout the day. And, you know, I'd gone my whole life without realizing that my emotions and thoughts didn't even want to be fixed. Like they just wanted me to stop trying to change them and just be with them. And what I found was that sometimes when I was stuck in a really difficult story in my head, it's because there were sensations in my body that I didn't want to feel. So it's like a pressure valve exploding into these desperate and urgent thoughts. So this practice became a way to release that pressure. And I'd often find that the charge in my thoughts would just calm down on its own. The more time I spent in my body being present, being the space in which everything arose, urgency, pressure, fear, grief, doubt, pain, discomfort, like the more I saw my symptoms resolve. First, it was those 33 days of intense flaring, then 2 weeks of calm, then 3 more weeks of flaring. And when the highs would return, I'd immediately panic, thinking I was back to square one, like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? I've regressed, I've lost all my progress. And I realized, obviously with the help of Sam and Missy's teachings, that healing is never linear. Like it moves in spirals, following the same rhythm as everything else in life. So it's like this contraction and expansion, just like our lungs and our heartbeat. So I just rolled with it and allowed things to cycle at their own pace without interfering. And there is this analogy I wanted to share that helped me so much. I actually came up with it myself, but then later realized it's pretty popular. But yeah, like just imagine you're on a train platform and the platform is your true self, like this vast unconditional space and presence just witnessing. And the trains that constantly pass by, those are your thoughts, emotions, symptoms. And we naturally feel compelled to hop onto the train. And when we are on the train, we are inside the experience, swept up in it and becoming identified with it. But when we're on the platform, we're just watching. We see the train, but we're not inside it. And whenever we find ourselves on the train, we can just get off at the next stop and get back on the platform. Like, the train cannot exist without the platform. So the platform is always there for you to hop back onto. And yeah, like now I eat whatever I want. I'm fully weaned off my antihistamines since the reduction of my symptoms. I've even traveled, been to a wedding, I'm working out again, sweating, doing my 10K steps, going to concerts, sitting in the sun, like all the things I was so afraid of before. And in so many ways, my life feels so much more full and authentic than it ever did before the hives, because there's just so much more flow and there's no need to control outcomes anymore. Before, so much of my behavior was ruled by my ego. Now my actions and behaviors come more from my true self, and when they don't, it's a lot easier to recognize that. And this transformed not just my symptoms but my entire relationship to life. Like, it taught me how to truly feel, how to be present with life and all that it may bring, including the darkness, and hasn't turned me into some detached spiritual being. I've just learned what a regulated nervous system feels like and what it means to be fully human. And you know, this isn't new. Vedic texts, Buddhism, ancient traditions have taught this for millennia, but I only knew it as a concept before, but now it's actually embodied. And maybe this video surprised you a bit, as it didn't end up being about finding the right supplement stack or the perfect diet or some magic healing protocol. It was actually about remembering who I really am underneath the suffering and surrendering to what is. It turned out that my illness was orchestrated for me in service of something far greater than I could ever understand at the time, or that my human mind could ever be responsible for. And it was the wisest path leading me to a greater version of myself. I don't know if this path looks the same for everyone, but I do know that I thought it was impossible for me, and somehow it wasn't. Maybe you have some specific questions you'd like to ask or want me to expand on something. So feel free to drop any questions you may have in the comments, and I'd be glad to answer them. And thank you so much for watching, and I really hope that it's been helpful for you.